Welcome to the 700 Club. Starlink, Elon Musk's satellite internet service, could help Iranian protesters in the fight against their brutal regime. That's why lawmakers are calling on the State Department to coordinate the effort on the ground.
The plan is not without risks. Iran's security forces could track down and punish users and their families in retaliation. Caitlin Burke reports.
At the end of September, the U.S. eased restrictions on internet services to counter the government's censorship. Elon Musk wants to take it one step further by providing Iranians with Starlink, his satellite internet service. While the satellites are now active over Iran, the internet signal won't be accessible until portable receivers can somehow be delivered on the ground.
In Ukraine, he pushed thousands of them, but obviously we had a government to work alongside. In Iran, we don't, but there are NGOs on the ground. We have covert means through various partnerships and routes that we can get these things in.
Congressman Mike Waltz believes the U.S. government should coordinate those efforts. He and Representative Maria Salazar recently wrote to Secretary of State Antony Blinken requesting the State Department get involved.
And liftoff of Starlink 435.
I mean, this Starlink system can be an avenue for freedom and be an avenue to expose these regimes. Whether it's cell phone videos being taken of their brutality or just people's message to their loved ones around the world that's trying to get out. I think we have a moral responsibility to help get these receivers in so that they can link up with the satellites and get these messages out.
The receivers would allow users to bypass firewalls put in place by the Iranian government and connect directly to satellite internet. Musk himself has warned, however, that there's significant risk involved. The signal can be easily tracked, which means Iran's security forces could locate users, shut them down, and arrest them. Still,
they are taking risks not to just themselves, but to their entire families, because these regimes crack down not just on the person daring to speak out, but their family, their village, their entire tribe. They're still willing to take those risks, and they're willing to fight for their freedom.
Waltz hopes the U.S. will agree to facilitate this public-private partnership, but worries the Biden administration may not want to rock the boat with the Islamic regime in order to complete a new Iran nuclear deal. Gordon?
Well, Caitlin, Starlink, how has it helped in the fight against Russia? And it's been installed in Ukraine, so how has it helped?
Well, Ukrainian military officials say it's really been a game changer there. Russia was looking to totally block communications, and Starlink allowed the Ukrainian military to bypass that. So not only were they able to communicate with their troops on the front line, their troops on the front line were able to let their families know that they're okay, and they were also able to use military technology that relies on an internet signal like drones, and they're still actively using that today. Now, clearly, one big difference between Ukraine and Iran is that the Ukrainian government wants Starlink and the Iranian government does not. But lawmakers say if we can find a way to activate it in places like Iran, then it can also be used as a tool for other oppressed nations like Cuba and China or North Korea. Gordon?
Elon Musk has pointed out there's a fundamental flaw that you can't actually track it because these things are also transmitters. So how useful will it be in a situation where the government is actively looking for that signal and then can swoop in and shut it down?
It's definitely a risk. You know, the receivers need to be in a wide open space in order to get a signal. So they're going to be pretty obvious, you know, if they're mounted on a roof. And as you said, the signal is trackable. And Musk warned about that in Ukraine. And he's warning about it for Iran as well. But lawmakers like Waltz said that the Iranians know that risk and they are still begging for it. They say that, you know, they're willing to use it for as limited as an amount of time as they can, and that they think that it will still be helpful. So unknown, but they still want it. Gordon?
Well, let's talk about the protests in Iran that continue to grow. So how is this changing and how is the government responding?
So the protests entered their fourth week as of Sunday, and people are only growing more and more emboldened. Over the weekend, a state-run newscast was actually hacked. First, a picture of a cartoon mask popped up during a segment with Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khamenei, and then his picture popped up on the screen with a target on his head, alongside the images of the women who have been killed in Iran over the last month. So the protesters are finding a way to get around the government blocks on the internet and on social media apps, and they're still getting their message out. You know, the government is continuing to violently crack down, and the U.S. is condemning that, but it doesn't show any, there's no end in sight to these protests, Gordon.
All right. Well, Caitlin, thanks for the report. In other news, Israeli police are searching for a Palestinian who shot and killed a female soldier this weekend. John Jessup has more on that story from our CBN News Bureau in Washington. John?
Thanks, Gordon. The attack took place at a checkpoint Saturday night in an East Jerusalem neighborhood. This video shows the terror suspect walking up to a group of soldiers and firing at point-blank range. The shooting coming hours after 2 Palestinian teenagers died in an Israeli military raid in Judea and Samaria. The IDF has launched what it calls Operation Break the Wave in the territories, conducting nightly raids designed to stop terror attacks before they happen. Well, turning now to increasing concerns that the world is closer to nuclear weapons strike. North Korea confirms that a recent barrage of missile launches were the simulated use of tactical battlefield nukes. This as Russia, which has threatened to use nuclear weapons on Ukraine, unleashed a new barrage of missile attacks this morning. Dale Hurd has the story.
North Korea says 7 missile launches, including 2 Sunday, were drills of its tactical nuclear operation units, training to wipe out U.S. and South Korean targets. Pyongyang is upset over recent U.S.-South Korean live-fire exercises in the region. Meanwhile, explosions rocked multiple Ukrainian cities today, including the capital of Kyiv, where in just one strike, at least 8 people were killed and 24 were injured. The attack was Russian President Vladimir Putin's response to the Saturday explosion on the huge bridge connecting Russia to its annexed territory of Crimea. The attack believed to be the work of Ukraine. Ukrainian President Zelensky told his nation Russia is trying to wipe us off the face of the earth. This as there are growing fears Putin might use nuclear weapons in Ukraine. Joe Biden recently warned that the risk of nuclear Armageddon is the highest it's been since the Cuban Missile Crisis. Former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo called those comments reckless.
Even more importantly, they demonstrate maybe one of the greatest foreign policy failures of the last decades, which was the failure to deter Vladimir Putin in the same way that the Trump administration did for 4 years.
The White House defended Biden's statement.
The president was reflecting the very high stakes that are in play right now.
Former Joint Chiefs Chair Mike Mullen says Putin's nuclear threats have to be taken seriously.
He's I believe, a cornered animal, and I think he's more and more dangerous, just what's happened in the last 24 hours.
Meanwhile, a Biden foreign policy initiative in the Middle East is putting the American economy at risk. OPEC is cutting production in part because the White House is trying to make a nuclear deal with Iran, which many Arab nations oppose. Joe Biden is continuing to tap the Strategic Petroleum Reserve to try to keep gas prices lower in the weeks leading up to Election Day.
This is a failure of American policy. Joe Biden is directly responsible for the place that the world finds itself in energy. And frankly, his party, the progressive left, 25 years of thinking you were going to run the world on sunshine and windmills.
America's new energy crisis even has Barack Obama's Treasury Secretary blaming the White House.
Look, we made a mistake by canceling the Keystone Pipeline. We made a mistake by slowing down all kinds of permitting activity. We made a mistake by being hostile as a country to natural gas.
High gas prices are already hurting Democrats, and the last thing they need in the run-up to the midterms is another price increase. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
Thank you, Dale. Well, residents in southwest Florida continue to assess the damage and pick up the pieces after Hurricane Ian. With Whole neighborhoods washed away and more than 100 dead. We're getting a picture that the emotional toll is beginning to have. The Associated Press reports 2 men in their 70s took their own lives after seeing their losses. The state of Florida now setting up support centers to help victims deal with the psychological and emotional trauma. FEMA has a 24-hour hotline to provide counseling and crisis support. Meanwhile, CBN's Operation Blessing continues to help victims in the hurricane's aftermath. The ministry has delivered more than 460,000 pounds of relief to churches and ministries in Fort Myers, Naples, and other hard-hit areas. In Port Charlotte, a team from the ministry Christ for All Nations volunteered with Operation Blessing to help clean up damaged homes and yards. One volunteer talked about the joy she found in helping others.
It's been amazing just to come out here, be the hands and the feet of Jesus, been able to go out here to pray with other people, to pray with the organization before we go out to different people's houses, and to really just do the work that Jesus would do. Because I would think that if Jesus was here today, right now, he would be doing the same exact thing we are. That's putting the tarps on people's roofs, cleaning up their yards, doing whatever they need. Just see a need, meet a need.
Doing the good work. Gordon, back to you.
Well, volunteers are needed in Port Charlotte, Florida. There's some conditions. You have to be an adult. You have to be at least 18 years old. It has to be local, daytime volunteers only. We don't have the ability to provide overnight lodging. So if you want to volunteer and help those in need, there's a special phone number here, 1-800-730-2537, or you can visit the website, ob.org, and you can find a place where you can volunteer. Volunteers are absolutely needed. The destruction is horrific. In Fort Myers, Port Charlotte, it's absolutely incredible what has happened there, and we need to be there for them. If you can't go, if you can't volunteer and you'd like to give, we have a special designated fund, the Operation Blessing Disaster Relief Fund. If you'd like to give to that, you can write to us at CBN Center, Virginia Beach, Virginia, 23463. You can call us and say, I want to give to the Disaster Relief Fund. To our regular number, 1-800-700-7000. You can go to cbn.com. There's a place you can designate your gift, or you can text. Text to give. OBDR, text those letters, OBDR, to 71777. Either way, be a part of it. Be a part of helping people in need.